Good evening, everyone. Today's topic is mariculture. Let's get started. Mariculture is known as marine farming. It is a specialized branch of aquaculture. Now, many of you are wondering, what is aquaculture? Let me give you some brief background information. Aquaculture is the production of aquatic organisms under controlled conditions. Mariculture has its own methods of production of these aquatic organisms, and we will be discussing that today. Mariculture involves the cultivation of marine organisms for food, other animal products, pharmaceuticals, and even jewelry. Many of you are wondering, what is cultivating? Cultivating means to prepare and use or to acquire and develop, and in this case, it's to develop or produce aquatic organisms. The history of mariculture started as early as 1000 BCE in China. The Zhou dynasty described mariculture with fish farming, the fish called the carp. This fish was known as good luck and good fortune when anyone caught it. During the transition of emperors, the new Emperor Li forbade fish farming on the carp due to him having the same name, and he thought it was an insult. The Cypripedidae family developed the first form of polyculture to stimulate algae growth for nutrition, which is a form of mariculture. Now, while China was and still is well known for its huge impact with mariculture, it is also known in Europe, specifically in ancient Rome. Rome created the oyster farms. In Rome, they created an Incarium vivarium, which is a swimming pool where fish were kept alive until the Romans were ready to eat them. In the Middle Ages, mussel farming was created, and to give you a deeper dive into history, during the Renaissance, freshwater farming was developed in Europe. In Germany, they began artificial breeding, which was created during the 19th century, and that's when trout farming came to light. Now let's get into Africa. They were known for foreliger farming, and this fishing brought to light the tilapia. And by the 21st century, aquaculture and mariculture became well known and considered vital for survival. Now let's talk a little bit about the benefits of mariculture. As we know, there are always warnings about the negative impact on marine life, but let's talk about the benefits. Mariculture can produce food and other sources of nutrients for aquatic organisms. Another benefit is it restores habitat and replenishes wild stock. This can rebuild the ecosystem that has been destroyed by other human activity on marine life, as well as other wild stocks that have become extinct. Lastly, it helps rebuild the population of endangered species. Now, while we focus on the benefits of mariculture, let's touch on the benefits on land. The number one benefit is it increases food production, and it also helps boost economic growth. That's amazing. These organisms can produce and keep their waterways clean. This is for specific algae produce. Not only does it help with fish production, these fish can be free of toxins, heavy metals, and mercury, making them healthier to eat. And lastly, and most importantly, it creates job opportunities all over the world. While we talked about the positive impacts, let's dive into the negative impacts on marine life and on land. First, this can pollute the waterways with excess nutrients and fecal matter due to the large amount of fish farmed. This can be seen both in water and on land. This can also transfer diseases and parasites not only to migrating fish, but also to the humans that eat the fish produced and farmed. Mariculture can lead to invasive species damaging the ecosystem. Now, the uneaten fish or food produced from mariculture, even the feces, can flow into the ocean and cause phytoplankton to bloom, which is very dangerous because it can reduce oxygen in the ocean. And oxygen reduction can cause death to many species. Algal bloom can also develop, which is harmful to marine life, especially invertebrate marine animals living on the seafloor. And lastly, it can cause overfishing, which can cause marine species to become extinct. Now on land, this can affect us because we will be clearing mangroves to build facilities, ponds, and waterways to produce and farm these fish, which can destroy other habitats as well as cause climate change. Lastly, fish feeding can become expensive as well as the equipment. And mariculture can also affect the biodiversity on marine life. Let's not get too wrapped up in the benefits and effects. Let's dive into the methods of mariculture. The first method is sea ranching. It started as early as 1974. It involves introducing wild-caught fish or hatchery-produced juveniles into natural environments where they grow without any containment structures. They can be placed in seabeds in a slurry form or by a length of pipe or hand. This is mostly seen with salmon, cod, and scallops. Another method is open ocean. This is where they raise aquatic organisms under controlled conditions where they're exposed to high energy ocean environments beyond coastal influence. This has been seen mostly in Panama and Australia. This method uses cages and nets that float freely. Now, as we've seen in Bali, Indonesia, we've seen this is how seaweed is replicated. To get into some of the newer methods, let's discuss enhanced stocking. This is a Japanese principle where they raise hatchlings in close-knit nets in a harbor. While in the harbor, the fishermen will sound a horn and they catch the fish that respond to the sound of the horn. Lastly, let's talk about the seawater ponds. Many fish were raised in these ponds that receive water and other nutrients from the sea. In these ponds, water purification plants can be planted to eliminate any buildup or harmful chemicals while the fish are maturing. While these methods are amazing to look at, let's take a look at how mariculture helps with food security. Mariculture increases the availability of fish as well as fish at a low cost due to the increased production. This production can cause an increase of consumption for humans, especially with the demand on seafood being high lately. The demands for consumption and other sources will be met with this food production. It can also increase nutrients for aquatic organisms who use fish as a food source. Food security is vital for the world, but let's dive into the economic advantages mariculture plays. We already discussed the food increased production and the profit as well as job opportunities, but let's take a look at how this increases and expands the supply locally and globally. Mariculture reduces global food hunger and improves health and well-being of the world's growing population by giving them another dietary option. This increased production of fish can meet the demands all year round. Mariculture is most popular in China, where we know it originated, and it's mostly seen in Indonesia, India, Vietnam, Philippines, Bangladesh, South Korea, Egypt, and even Norway, and lastly, Japan. Mariculture does not have any known alternatives due to it already being a branch of aquaculture that is supposed to be more sustainable, but there are two options that make it even more environmentally friendly. The first method is rice paddles and fish ponds. The rice paddles help attract fish as well as provide nutrients for the fish in these ponds. The second method is fish feeding, and this method is usually used for naturally caught fish as a source of food. This helps cut the cost of fish feeding with fish meal. It also reduces the risk and negative interaction between wild exotic fish and wild fish. And the most amazing benefit is it reduces and eliminates carbon emission because the naturally caught fish are used for food instead of having to pelletize their processed food. Now let's talk about the future prediction of mariculture, especially with the negative and positive impacts. Mariculture is stated to double by 2050 as the demand for seafood and other sources rise. This is due to population growth and change and advancement of living standards as well as technology innovation. While mariculture has been amazing, let's talk about the benefits and wrap this up. Mariculture has positive impacts of increasing food production, food security, job opportunities, and economic growth and wealth. It increases carbon emission if the food has to be pelletized. It can cause climate change, infection and diseases, and the spreads of parasites, and reduce biodiversity on marine life. Good evening, everyone.